This material is made available to you by or on behalf of the University of Melbourne under Section 113P of the Copyright Act 1968. It may be subject to copyright. For more information, visit the University Copyright website.
All right, is it going? Yep. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to week 5. Today, we are going to discuss DCF investment analysis and gearing. Right. Last few weeks, we discussed the related topics. Last week, we developed how to create discounted cash flows. And now, today, we are going to discuss gearing. So, what are the main, right, we are talking about the investment, property. When you talk about property, there are 3 key elements that we need to talk about. How do we invest our property? Financing. How do you finance? That's a key problem. That's the biggest problem. Everyone wants to invest in a property. You're really interested in, very keen in investing in properties. So how do you get finance? That is number 1. And once we turn with financing, then there are other 2 important things, which is taxation and depreciation. Today, our main focus is on financing, and next week we will be talking about taxation and depreciation. Financing. Right. Think you are an investor or you are an asset manager of a large property trust. Now we are thinking to invest in another investment property of commercial office building. So what are the sources for you? Sources of finance. How do you finance your investment? Yep. Very good. Equity. What are the other options? Debt. Those are the key main investment tools, source of finance. Equity finance, debt finance, the other source is, right. Those are the main key. So when you talk about debt finance, today our main focus is on debt finance. We'll be talking about types of debt finance, elements of debt finance, loan applications for debt finance, and nominal and effective interest rates. And then the other source of finance is, again, mortgage equity investment analysis. And then there are some other source of finances as well. We'll talk about that too. Right. When you talk about equity finance, there are 2 major sources in equity finance. There are 2 types. First one is internal, the other one is external. What is internal equity? You are an asset manager of a property company, investment company, and you are thinking about investing in property. Now, main source is your equity. Right. There are 2 types of equity, internal equity and external equity. What are the internal equity? Retained profits. So So your company has been operating for years, for decades, and you have earned some profit. You distribute your profit through the dividends to shareholders, but you do not distribute all your profits. You keep some profits with you in the company. So we call it a retained profit. Right. And then there are some other reserves as well, such as share premium and revaluation reserve. Share premium, you really can't use share premium for all these activities. There are some limited expenses that you can use, which you can use the share premium account, but revaluation reserves, you can use that. So that's internal liquidity. And then external liquidity financing. Main thing is share issues or debenture issues. When you talk about share issues, there are different kinds of share issues. What are the share issues that you have heard? First one, key thing is ordinary shares. Those are the key shareholders. They have a full rights of your company. Right. They have a voting rights. They are the owners. So there's no fixed percentage or dividends. If the company has profit, then you will get the dividends. Right. We'll only receive the dividends after other shares. Real owners of the company, that's ordinary shareholders. And preferential shares carry the right to receive a dividend which must be paid in fully before any dividend payment. They don't have a fully right as ordinary shareholders, but they have an advantage. If company has a limited profit, they will get the first dividend. If there's any remaining, then ordinary shareholders will get their profit. That's the difference between preferential shares and ordinary shares. And what is accumulative preference shares? That's another shares. There are some preference shares. You are entitled to receive profit, a dividend this year, but, for example, say 8%. But anyhow, company did not perform very well, and your preference shareholders did not get dividends. The following year, you are entitled to again 8% dividends. And preference shareholders are entitled to get this year 8% plus previous year 8%. That's called accumulative preference shares. Right. Participating preference shares. As I told you, preference shareholders are not really owners of they are, but they have limited rights, limited obligation. But some preference shareholders have a participating right. They can participate in company's decision. They can vote sometimes, but it depends. Right? So they have more rights than preference shareholders. We call participating preference shares. And deferred shares. So these shares issued to the founders of the company. So we don't really issue these shares very often. So these shares are only for the founders of the company. And there's another share issue we call right issue. What's that? There's some companies, limited companies, private companies, they don't really like to distribute their ownership. Shareholders are owners. So what they do, they need equity, they need finance, they need more money, they need more capital. So they issue the shares, but only existing shareholders can purchase those shares. We call right issue. Only existing shareholders can get those shares. The other type of share is redeemable shares. What is redeemable shares mean? So company need finance, so company issues shares. But when the company is in a good position in financing, so company can buy back those shares. Now we don't have any issues with financing, so we have enough money, we call those shares back. So company has a right to buy those shares back. So we call redeemable shares. Right, those are the main types of shares when we talk about shares. Right. That's equity finance. Now, the second key part of financing is debt finance. Key part of financing, debt finance. There are two markets. If you want to get finance, there are two markets. One is primary market, the other one is secondary debt market. What is primary debt market? What is primary debt market? So borrower, lender, and borrowee are doing the deal face to face. There are no other third parties. The bank and the lender and the borrower. So we deal borrower and lender directly. So that's primary debt market. So through the primary debt market, you'll get short-term loans, medium-term loans, as well as long-term loans. Pretty clear. What is secondary debt market? Secondary debt market. In this case, if I'm a borrower, a lender, or borrower, say borrower, I don't go straight to the lender. I get another party, third party. And third party will deal with the lender. So when you talk about the secondary debt market, there are two kind of loans or financing available. First one is asset-backed securitization. The other one is mortgage-backed securitization. Right. How do you do this? Just talk about this. Right. Secondary debt markets. I'm a small company. I need finance. I go to the bank, closest bank, my personal bank. I go to that bank and say, I need finance. But banks are not happy to give you money, considering my financial situation. And I ask, can you issue a bond or bills or things like that for me? They would say, yes, we can do that. But there are two options. They will issue based on asset-backed securitization, we call, and the other option is mortgage-backed securitization. Right. What is asset-backed securitization? Right. Bank will issue bills or bonds to the public on behalf of us and give us that money. But bank needs security. So asset-backed securitization means bank keep all our receivables except mortgage. Say our debt receivable, if we are a construction company, our say mortgage repayments, all our receivable and debts, bank take those receivable as the security. And they know our cash flow. We have a good cash inflow. They are happy with that. And they keep those inflows, all receivables, all assets as a security. Right? So that's what we call asset-backed securitization. What is mortgage-backed securitization? The same scenario, the bank will issue bills or bond on behalf of us and give us the money, but bank keep mortgages, our mortgage, as a security. That's what we call mortgage-backed security. Clear? Right. Now, what are the source of debt finance? How do you get the money? Where can we borrow money from? Right. First thing, obviously, the banks. All banks borrow money, lend money. We can borrow money from any banks. That's their main business. Right? Borrow. We can borrow money from banks. And then finance companies. Interest rate is slightly higher in finance companies, but still they do good service. AMP, BT Financial Groups, Macquarie Group, they are key finance companies in Australia, but there are a lot. There are more. And specialist lenders, or we call non-conforming lenders. What is that called? Specialist lenders. So we go to the bank. We say we need money. Bank will check all our bank statements, financial statements, profit and loss account for last few years, balance sheets, and our cash flows. Bank will say, they're not really happy with our cash flows and decline. Then what can we do? But we still need money. But there are some financial organizations, they are not tough as banks. They do not really do all the tough regulations, tough streaming, and they lend money. But their interest rate is higher. Of course, they take a higher risk. Right? Who are unable to meet the lending criteria set by banks can go to these specialist lenders, or we call non-conforming lenders. Right? So that's the specialist lenders. Other option is the syndicated loan or syndicated bank facilities. Right. What is that? Think your company need to invest a huge amount of money, say $5 billion. And you go to the bank will check all your investment proposals, market analysis, valuations, cash inflows and outflows and everything. Bank is really happy. It's a very viable, a very profitable investment. But the investment is too large, very large. For example, say 5 billion. Bank is happy to lend, but it's too risky to give that a large amount. What banks do, banks get some other banks, few banks together. And they say, for example, 5 banks come together, all right, we lend you $1 billion each. So bank work as a syndicate. Right. So bank distribute their risk among those banks. Rather than one bank giving $5 billion and 5 banks give $1 billion each. So they minimize their risk, but invest in there. So that's what we call syndicated loans. Right. Any question? No. So we talked about equity financing, debt financing. The third one is others. What's other source of finance? Sale and lease back. Sale and lease back. That's where corporate real estate comes play a big role in business strategy. There are some organizations, they have assets. There are some organizations which have assets. Right. If they can't get the money from the financial institutions, from bank, due to their poor cash flow or anything, so what can they do is they can sell their asset and then get the cash. But even though they sell their assets, those companies can stay in the building as a lease tenant. So in the lease agreement, stay. For a business company, most important thing, what's the most important thing? Holding the building or they continue the business? Of course, continue the business. So when it comes to the option, if you have a serious cash flow problem, what companies do? They sell the asset, even the same building, and lease back, stay in the same building. investors really have to do that because they get the investment property with the tenant without any problem. Right. Same thing happened to the company I worked. We ran company really smoothly, but after a while we had some serious cash flow issues, and we had to sell our own building and stay in the same building. So that's the other source of finance. Not very common, but still works.
Well, what's the value the bank is buying the asset for? Is it the market value? Cheaper or more?
It depends. If you probably this market value, it's market value, right? If the building is already mortgaged to that bank, right? How much mortgage you own to the bank, and they do the valuation, acquisition, right? Normally the process is they do the open auction or tender, right? And then calculate the valuation and pay the rest to us, record the fees. Right. It depends which scenario you have. If it's already mortgaged one, it's different. If fully owned one, it's different. Right. Good. So this is a summary. Source of financing. We talk about equity, debt, and others. In equity, internal and external debt, primary debt market, which is short-term, medium-term, and long-term loans. And secondary debt market, asset-backed securitization, and mortgage-backed securitization. And third source of finance is others. All right. Any questions with that? Clear? Good. Now, we talk a little bit more about debt financing. Right. What are the key elements of this debt financing? So you need money. What's the first thing? What's the first question? How much you need? Right. How much you need? How do you decide it? You need $10 million. Do you get exactly 10 million? No. So what are the criteria which that amount will be determined? How much security you have? How much security you have? The bank will determine loan to value ratio. Okay, 65% or 75% or 80%. If you have asset was 10 million, bank will 0. The loan to value ratio is 75%. Then you only can borrow 7.5 million. Right. You can borrow up to 7 million. If you have 100 million worth of assets, fine. You can borrow $10 million without any problem, no issues. A syndication for large amounts. Yeah, we told about syndication. So if you need big amount, you can go for syndication. And then term. Second main element of debt financing is term. Is it long term or short term? That's key thing. And third one is interest rate. Whether it's fixed interest rate or it's a variable interest rate. It could be nominal interest rate, or then what is the effective interest rate. We'll talk about this later. Right. If it is a fixed interest rate, how long it will be fixed? Maximum 3 years, 5 years, or 6 years? What's the period? Right. And then fees. When you get a loan, there are you have to pay different fees. First one is loan establishment fees. The valuer, professional valuer will value your assets, value your building. So valuation fees and legal fees, mortgage insurance, another key expenditure, property insurance, stamp duty, that's the biggest expenditure, and statutory and bank charges. So you will have to pay all these fees. And not only that, you go to the bank, one thing, the key thing, they will check your borrower's track record. For example, you borrow 1 million from a bank, you default, and you think, all right, I'll go to a different bank. They don't know about my history. All right, I'll give some message, and they will lend me. Now, they have all these records. There are different countries that have, for example, they have Credit Information Bureau. If any banks that default customers, they send all the information to that bureau, that center. And then all banks or financial institutions can go get these records. If you come to me, I'll send your details to that center, that information center, and check whether you are blacklisted. If you are blacklisted, if you have a bad track record, you won't get the loan even from any bank, right? So they will check your track record, your experience, and your financial strength, everything. And other terms. What are the other terms? If you borrow a long-term loan with a fully drawn loan, for example, if you pay early, if you want to settle early, you borrow a loan for 10 years, and now you want to settle the loan in 2 years' time. You can settle, but you'll have to pay a fine. Because bank is set that amount for you, and bank are planning that income. It's not a big amount, but still you have to pay a fine. And timing of interest payment, whether it's at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year. And default penalties. So if you had to pay the loan installment first of every month, and you couldn't pay it, they'll charge a penalty. Right. So those are the key elements. And subordination of loans. That's key. That's the key thing. What is subordinated debt? For example, if I am a borrower, I went bankrupt. And then that bank should be able to recover my loans. And which position are they or this loan in terms of recovering that loan? There are some certain order. The first thing, the legal people, insolvency people, they need to recover the money, right? Then banks, shareholders are the last, then loans. So when the banker will decide, so which position I am in just in case if the borrower bankrupt, which is my position, right? So all these are key elements of debt financing. All right. All right. Now, types of debt finance. We talk about sources, everything. Now, types of debt financing. What types of debt you can borrow? Overdraft, commercial bills, fully drawn advance, term lending, bridging finance, mortgage finance, lease finance, and hire purchase. Those are the key things. So what is overdraft? I'm pretty sure you have heard that. What is overdraft? What is overdraft? So you have an account. You only have, for example, 10,000 in your bank account. But you need to spend $15,000. So you can get approval from the bank to spend $15,000. Or if you have a good history, bank will say, without even asking, bank will say, pay. If you have 10,000, bank will give probably 11,000 or up to 12,000 without asking or anything, since you are a customer. So it's a temporary facility. But if you ask for a bank, this could be temporary or permanent. Bank will give the companies a permanent overdraft. So even though you don't have money in your account, the bank will give, right, we give 200,000 permanent overdraft. So you can draw or checks or make payments up to 200,000 every day, even though you don't have any money in your account. When you get money, you have to settle it. For business, that's a regular thing. That's a very normal. Every company, every organization, every business organization have bank overdraft, and which is very important. Right. So you draw checks or you make payments without having money in your account. Banks give you that facilities we call overdraft facilities. Right. That interest rate is quite high, reasonably high. If it is a permanent overdraft, bank will keep some securities, just in case. Right. Or for temporary overdraft, bank wouldn't say. Normally they will call you. We got payments over the limit. What can you do? They say, please honor it. We'll settle it within 1 week or 2 weeks. Then it's done. Right. So interest rate is high. Without any money, you can use it. It's easy. You don't have to fill much forms or lending criteria. It's a relationship with the banks. Yeah.
It's like a credit card would be.
Exactly like a credit card. Yeah, it's like a credit card. Right. Commercial bills. That's mainly from secondary debt market. We go to bank. We say we need money. Can we do some bills or bond for us? They will issue bills to the public, and they collect the money funds from the public and give it to us. Asset-backed securitization or mortgage-backed securitization. Right. When we need large amount of money, we can use that. It's a big process. It takes long time to process, and it's bit expensive, but you can collect large amount of money. And fully drawn advance. What is fully drawn advance? Normally they are long-term loans, probably 10 years or 15 years. Interest rate could be fixed or variable. But you pay installment, principal plus interest. Decided how the installment is going to be. Right. For long term and fixed installment throughout the loan period. Term lending. It's quite similar to fully drawn advance, but it's short term. Could be variable or interest only, and then interest plus capital. Bridging finance. Have you heard about bridging finance? Get the meaning. Bridging finance. So you have applied for the bigger loan, or you have asked bank to issue commercial bills or bond for us. And what it takes time to process, probably a few years, 2 years, 3 years. You have to get the permission and do all the regulations and everything. And it might take 2 or 3 years to issue a bond sometime. But if you need money, during that period, bank will issue a bridging loan. They know that you get money, right? For the short term, we will issue the loan until you get that big money. So we call bridging finance. Even for personal purposes, we can do that. For example, you have a house, and you're going to buy a bigger house, right? So your existing house worth 500,000, and the house you're going to buy worth say $1 million, right? So the house you want to buy is $1 million, and it's in the market. You go to the bank, and say, I want to buy this house, but I will sell my existing house and settle half of that loan. And bank will take, yep, your house is worth, existing house is worth 750,000, and bank will lend $1 million to buy that new house until you sell your existing house. So when you sell your house for a certain, say 750,000, you can settle 750,000, and your only loan is 250,000 remaining loan. So again, we call it bridging finance. Until you settle that, sell your existing home, bank will lend full amount. Bank knows that you will get that reasonable money from the existing house. Again, we call it bridging finance.
For the bridging finance, wouldn't it be like the asset-backed security where the bank is taking your assets?
This is a primary market between me and lender. Right? Asset-backed security it's a secondary market. We are getting money from the public through the financial institutions. Clear? The financial institution bank does it for us. We get money from the public. Public gives money to us through the bank. Clear? But in this case, it's primary market. Right. Mortgage finance, of course, you know that. You mortgage your property and get the loan. And lease finance, mainly for the machineries, equipments. You can do lease and hire purchase finance. You borrow money and buy your stuff, equipments, machineries, and pay installments. They both work in a similar way, but the legal it's slightly different. What's the main difference between lease and hire purchase? If you buy anything on lease, you are not the owner of that property until you purchase this. Normally, if you buy a vehicle on lease, at the end, you have to pay a transfer interest. Once you finish all your installments throughout the 4 years or 5 years, but owner of that vehicle is your financial lender, financial institution. Right? Owner is a bank. Until bank transfer that vehicle to you, for example. Right? So at the end of the lease period, once you finish all your lease payments, then you have to pay a small amount as a transfer. It's a legal requirement. And then bank or financial institution will transfer the ownership to you. So at the end, until the end, the lender is the owner under the lease. But in hire purchase, at the beginning, you are the owner. If you buy equipment through the hire purchase, you are the owner. But bank or any financial lender have a right to acquire this if you are default. That's the fundamental difference between lease and hire purchase. But they both work the same way. You pay the installments throughout the period. All right. Now we talk about debt, and you are going to apply for a loan. Right. You're going to buy an asset, say commercial office building or property. So now you need to apply for a loan. What do you need? What's the process? First, you need financial positions, and then investment description, and then financial forecast, and then valuation, investment structure, security, and market analysis. We need to do all these things. Right. What is financial positions mean? Banks or any lending institution will not give you money just for nothing. You need to give all these things. They'll check your financial positions. What do you need to provide? You need company account for current period and your P&L and balance sheet for last 3 years. It could be even more for some criteria. Right. On your borrowings, how much you have borrowed so far, and have you settled all these loans? What's your track record? Right. And cash flow available to meet the expenses. You'll ask for $25 million, and you need to show you have enough cash flow to pay your installment. Right. Otherwise, it'll be default. The loan will be default. So that make sure you have enough cash flow to pay their installments and your forecasted cash flow. If your investment period is 10 years, you need to show your forecasted cash flow. That's what we discussed in discounted cash flow. It's really important tools, right? Investment, right? Investment description. Title and building consultant's report. You need to get a building consultant and get the report from them, whether it's a good building, any structural damage or anything, what need to be done for next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So building consultant's report. And financial performance in the past few years. Planning information including zonings. That's important. If government plan to acquire that buildings in that area in next 3 years, 5 years time, the lender will be in trouble too. So they need to check whether there's any future plan happening in that area, right? So planning information in zoning. And consolidation or subdivision proposals and redevelopment, refurbishment potentials. So all those things come about under investment descriptions, right? And financial forecast. If it is a commercial office building, you need to show that tenants details, lease details. Who are the tenants? Are they well-established tenants? Large tenants, large established tenants. Then you have a higher value because that bank know that you will have a regular leasing income. Right. And lease details. What's the average weighted average lease length? Right. If the WALE is longer, you have a higher chance. If the WALE is short, probably they'll think. Debt service capability, and sensitivity studies. We'll do sensitivity analysis. Right. So if the interest rate changes, will you be still pay the installments, you pay repayment capacities and everything. Right. Then evaluation. Independent valuer need to get a valuation of your building. It's a market value, prices worth. So you are happy to pay $10 million to buy that building. Then value on the valuation report shows it's worth only $8 million. So your price is different from the value. Right. So you need a valuation report, and then you have to prove why do you spend $10 million, but it's only worth $8 million. Right. You need to get the market valuation report. Right. And investment structure. What is your structure? What's the structure of investment? You are a corporate, public company, or private limited company. Right. Then who are the shareholders? How many shareholders? It's partnership. What's a partnership? 2 people, 3 people come together and form a business based on agreement. Right. So that's called partnership. How is the syndicate? What is syndicate in this case? Similar kind of business organizations come together to do the business. Called syndicate. Are you in a part of a syndicate? or joint venture. When two people come together to do a business. So what is joint venture difference from partnership? What's the difference between partnership and joint venture? Yep. Any idea? Partnership is a going concern. Your business, you and your business partner will do a business continuously. There's no time limit. As long as business works, you are happy, you agree, the business will run. But joint venture, you two come together just for a purpose. Just to do one business, short-term business, and that's it. Once you achieve that business, the target, the entity is dissolved. Right? For example, you don't have money and you get your business partner to buy a building or buy a land and build a building and then sell it. That's a joint venture. And you get the business partner or put some money together and build it and sell it. The joint venture is finished. That's over. Right. So partnership will keep going. You will do another one, like that. And the security. What asset do you have in addition to investment being purchased? If you have assets, you have higher chance to get bigger loan. Right? We're still talking about loan application for debt finance, and they'll check the securities as well. Right? Protection. What kind of protection that bank will have giving that loan? That's the key thing. Right. Any questions so far about financing? We talk about financing, equity financing, debt financing, and others. We talk more about debt financing. Any question? Yep.
I'm not quite clear about the private finance and public finance. Could you give me more details?
Where? Private? Did I talk about it?
You talk about, for example, like the fully drawn finance. Could you tell me, is that a public or private?
Fully drawn loan.
Yeah.
It's a bank and a borrower, lender and borrower.
You don't always want it from public.
It's a bond or bill. Bond or bill.
Oh.
It's a secondary market thing. For example, we need large amount of money, and then we ask bank or financial institution, mainly bank, to issue a bond or treasury bills to the public. So bank will issue bills or bonds for us, and then they will sell it to public. They collect money from public and give it to us. Right? Get it? That's a secondary market.
When those bonds issued, are they going to be like banks' bonds? Like with, let's say, bank has AAA rating.
Yep. But bank keep the security from us. Yeah, that's it. That's otherwise public couldn't buy it really. Right? That's the purpose of we using banks. Good. All right. Right. Let's talk about interest rate and investment financing and effect of gearing. First, interest rate. Nominal and effective interest rate. What is nominal interest rate? That's what we are normally talk about. We go to the bank and we ask, what's the interest rate? Bank will normally say the nominal interest rate. But that's not actually the effective interest rate. The nominal interest rate is, this is the annual interest rate always is. 10% per annum, 8% per annum, or for a residential house, say 3.49 or 3.99 per annum. We always say it's per annum. That's nominal interest rate. It is also the actual rate whenever the interest calculation coincide with the timing of the cash flow. What does that mean? Interest rate is per annum. When we calculate our cash flow or loan repayment per annum, that's actually the same rate. Right? So we call it simple annuity. Right. What is effective interest rate mean? This is the real interest rate paid whenever the interest calculation does not coincide with the timing of the cash flow. We go to the bank, borrow money, interest rate is 10% per annum. But we pay our installment monthly or quarterly. But actually then the effective interest rate is more than 10%. Right. So we call it general annuity. The previous one is a simple annuity. This one is general annuity. So general rules applies in calculations when effective interest rate applies. So first one, annual interest rate or nominal annuity is divided by the number of compounding period. For example, divided by 4 if we pay installment quarterly, or divided by 12 if we pay monthly installments. Right. And then number of period is multiplied by the same amount. Right. Example. Calculate this, please. Assuming an interest rate of 10% per annum and a 2-year period, calculate the future value of an initial $1,000 investment using annual compounding, quarterly compounding, and monthly compounding. B. Derive the effective interest rate formula use this to calculate the effective interest rate in each case. Right. Can you do the first one? Assuming an interest rate of 10% per annum and a 2-year period, calculate the future value of an initial 10,000 investment using. Right. Future value formula. What's the future value formula? Present value 1 plus I into the power n. Right. 1 plus I into the power n. So what's the annual compounding? For 2 years. Is that right? So future value is annual compounding 1,210. Quarterly compounding, so 10% per annum. So we pay quarterly. It means 10% divided by 4 and n 2 years multiplied by 4. Number of payment is 8. Per number of payment per year is 4 and for 2 years is 8. And when you pay quarterly, you pay $1,218.40. How about when we pay monthly? Monthly compounding. Divided by 12 and number of payment 12 multiplied by 2. Yeah. So monthly compounding, you'll pay 1,229.30. So what you can see is increase in the compounding period increases the future value. And it means you pay more interest for the same amount. So what does that mean? The effective interest rate is higher. Right. So increase in the compounding period increases the future value, and therefore the must also increases the effective interest payment made. So bank will say 5% per annum or 8% per annum, but you pay installment monthly. But actually effective interest rate is higher than that 10%. Right? If you do the investment, if you are an investment analysis for business, you have to consider your effective interest rate, not just the nominal interest rate. Right? Question 2. Derive the effective interest rate formula and use this to calculate the effective interest rate in each case. That's how you do it. Formula for effective interest. Say present value, say present value is 1. Let nominal INOM means nominal interest rate. Let IF mean effective interest rate, N number of years, M number compounding the period in year 1. So this is the formula for effective interest rate. You'll get it. Right. So use the same previous example, calculate the effective interest rate. So effective interest annually compounding is 10%. Quarterly compounding 10.38%. Monthly compounding 10.47%. Even though nominal interest rate is 10%, that's how it's changed the effective interest rate. The higher the repayment period, so more frequent compounding increases the effective rate of interest paid. Right? And be aware, the rate quoted per annum or nominal rate is not necessarily the rate paid when compounding happens more frequently than annual. Right? For the investment purposes, this is really important. That's why all business people, all investors, the main question is what is the effective interest rate, not just the normal interest rate. We talk about effective interest rate. That's the actual interest rate you pay. Right. All right. Now, we talk about investment financing and the effect of gearing. Important. Right. We talk about source of finance, method of finance. Now, right. Now, effect of gearing. What is gearing first? Right, first. Financing structure determine how the investments are financed. If you talk about finance and structure, what does financing structure means? How much equity you put, how much debt you put. That's financing structure. Now, you have a property company, investment trust, for example, or you are a property investor. You have 10 million in your cash account. You're going to buy a 10 million worth of building. That building worth 10 million, and you have that money in your account, free cash. And since you have a good cash flow and you are doing really good in your business, banks are happy to give you $10 million. Right. There's no problem. It's guaranteed that you will make the repayments perfectly. Banks are very happy to give you 10 million. So what's your choice? Do you use your 10 million or you borrow 10 million from the bank? Or do half, or 75, 25, 25%, 75, 25. What's your choice? How do you make a decision? Which one is the best mix? We can't say exactly this is the best way. It all depends. It all depends. We'll talk about it. What's the right mix? Right. Again, we talk about equity, debt. We just move this one away for a while. Equity and debt, short term. Right. What is gearing? Gearing's capital structure equal equity and debt. Gearing is a general term used to describe borrowing within an investment context. This is not something completely new. That's what we were talking about so far. So gearing is a general term or technical term used to describe borrowing within the investment context. Right? It refers to the use of borrowed fund to earn a return greater than the interest paid on the debt. Right. Right. How to measure gearing? How to measure gearing? Gearing ratio. Gearing is usually expressed as the ratio of debt to total asset. Right? That's the gearing ratio. Or we also use debt equity ratio. There are two major ratios. One is gearing ratio, the other one is debt equity ratios. Debt equity ratio is expressed as a ratio of debt to equity. Right. Effect of gearing on investment return. You might not have thought about this before, but it's time to think about it. Right. There are 5 scenarios. Say we talk about equity. We told you, we have $10 million in our bank account, retained profit, reserve. If you use all your 10 million, what's the return? Or second scenario, you use 50% borrowing, 50% your equity. In a rising market, that is the key thing. Your debt ratio or gearing ratio is mainly depend on the market condition, whether it's on a rising market or falling market. In investment, we call bull market or I'll talk about it later. Right. The rising market or falling market. Bull market or bear market. Right. So, for example, 50% gearing in rising market, bull market, 50% gearing in falling market, bear market. Or 100% gearing in rising market, 100% gearing in falling market. Right. Scenario 1. As we discussed, we have $10 million in our bank account. For this example, 200,000. You use 200,000 from your equity. So your return is 14%. How much you'll get? Your income is 28,000. You get 14% return on your investment. Because it's complete your investment because you use your own fund. Right. Scenario 2. You calculate 50% gearing in rising market. So your total investment is 200,000. You use 100,000 equity, 100,000 debt. So you expected return on investment is 14% and interest rate is 12%. So what will be the return on your equity? if you use 50-50. I'll do this here. So return on investment is 14%, so you'll get $28,000 income for the total 200,000 investment, right? So in this case, your debt is 100,000. How much you pay as interest? 12,000, right? And remaining income is 100,000, which is for your investment. So basically, you invest $100,000 and you get 16,000 return. So your return on equity is how much? 16%. Right. This is rising market. So your return on investment is 14%. But because of using debt or gearing, you increase your return on investment to 16%. Clear? All right. Move to scenario 2 or scenario 3. 50% gearing on a falling market. Again, now the market is falling, it's facing downturn. Your return on investment is 10%. And same interest rate, 12%. So what will be the outcome? Since the market is going downturn, you don't earn as much as profit as before. So your return is 10%. So if you invest 200,000, your income will be 20%. Okay. So now you borrow 100,000 and you have to pay 12% interest on it. Right. Now you invest your equity 100,000. So how much remaining? How much is the return for you? 100,000 is 8,000. So your return on investment, your return on equity is 8%. So in this case, if you use equity for both for all 200,000, your return will be 10%. Since you use gearing, you borrow 100,000, you reduce your return on equity to 8%. Okay. It's mainly depend on the market condition. If you are in a rising market, if the return on investment is higher than your loan interest, it's always good to use a bit. Right. Now scenario 4. 100% gearing in rising market. So investment value is 200,000, return is 14% and interest rate is 12%. Calculate. Return on investment is 14%, so your income will be $28,000. Right. So then you borrow 100%, it means 200,000. Right. Total investment 28,000. Now you borrow total 200,000. So how much you have to pay as interest for your borrowing? 12%. It's 24,000. And you have, what's the difference? 4,000 excess. You earn $4,000. How much you spend? How much you invest? Sorry, nothing. Without investing even a cent, even a penny, you earn $4,000. Right? Is that a return on investment or return on equity? No, because you didn't have any equity. You didn't use any of your equity, so it's a profit. Right? If you use your own equity, you wouldn't get this profit. Right? Go to scenario 5. Falling market. return on investment is quite low, right? So your total investment is 200,000. Your return on investment is 10%, so your income is 20,000. Since you borrow all 200,000, you have to pay interest for that. Right. So how much interest you pay? 12% mortgage interest, so you pay 24,000. So what's the end? You lost 4,000 because you pay interest more than your income because of your borrowing. If you use your own equity, your return will be 10%. All right. Another one. With 60% gearing in rising market, 14% return on investment, 12% interest. So 200,000 investment, 14% return on investment. So your income is 28,000. Right. You borrow 60%. Your gearing is 120,000. And with a 12% interest rate, you pay 14,400 as interest. Right. So now your equity, you use 80,000 equity, and your income is 13,600. Because remaining income is your return on your equity. So what's the return on equity? 13,600 divided by 80,000. Your return on equity is 17%. That's how you real investors use the debt or gearing to increase their return. Right? The important thing is gearing is favorable if the rate of return on asset exceeds the cost of borrowing. When debt service is less than the rate of return on asset value, additional financial leverage increases the net cash flow of the firm. Right. If your interest rate, you borrow money, your interest rate is lower than the return on investment, borrow as much as you could. Then you could increase the return on your equity. Right. If the interest rate is higher than the return on investment, borrow the minimum. Otherwise, it will reduce your return on equity. So find the balance. It's not just interest rate, or it's not just you have a cash and you can use it, or it's not just bank lend you 100% or you can use it. It depends on the market condition. It depends on the market condition, whether it's a rising market or falling market, and your return on investment. If your return on your forecast return on your investment is higher than the bank interest, it's good to borrow as much as you could. Right. If your return on investment is lower than the bank interest rate, bank loan criteria is tight, bank charge high interest rate, so borrow the minimum. Find the mixture. Right. Sometimes that's why, if it's a bull market, even though you have a very good cash flow, you always borrow money. So you can increase your return on your equity. You can use your money to keep a good cash flow to your business. All right. Right, now it's exercise time. Refer to DCF step-by-step investment analysis spreadsheet on LMS under week 5, particularly step 9A and 9B. Right. Treat the loan and repayment as transactions to the conceptual bank account as follows. We'll go to that. Right. Can we get the Excel one, please? Lecture 5, copy of DCF step-by-step investment analysis. Right, these are the information. Loan amount become a cash flow in year 1, right, fine. It's treated as a 70% of price 4 million, not the price plus purchase cost, right. If the interest on the loan, treated interest as annual cash flow at 8% and then loan repayment at the outflow in year 10. If principal and interest loan, that is amortized, treat loan repayment as annual cash outflow using the annual function, right. Another key thing is how do you pay the, say, right, market is rising market or bull market, it's good to borrow as much as you could because return on equity, return on investment is higher than the interest rate. But again, how do you pay your loan? Is it an only interest only loan or amortized loan? What is amortized loan? Interest plus principal. It has an influence on your return on investment. You'll see it when you do this exercise. Right. Now we learn about discounted cash flows last 2 weeks. Can you guys complete this one for me, please? So price of the building is 4 million. So you will get 350,000 net cash flow after all the expenditure. Right. Initial cap rate is 7%, discount rate is 11%. Terminal cap rate 8%, purchase expenses are 6%, sales expenses are 2.5%, rental growth per annum is 4%. So rent review 2 yearly. So you need to borrow 4 million, and term loan details, loan to value ratio is 70%. So value is 4 million and you only get loan 70% of the loan. Loan interest rate is 8%. Right. Take a few minutes and tell me the net present value, and internal rate of return. If you have any question, please ask me. Right. Any question? Yes. Practice in DCF is really important. For valuation purposes, investment purposes, so any purposes, discounted cash DCF is really important tool. We'll do it. You know how to do it.
Well, I sit here every week and I still can't get stuck, so
Ready?
it'd be good to find.
Yeah, yeah, sure, I'll do it. No problem. Yeah, sure. Sure. How are you doing? Good? Any questions?
Not yet.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, keep doing. Good. How about you? Any question?
No.
Great. Please ask. Feel free to ask some questions. All right. Let's do. Purchase price. All the initial expenditure goes in year 0. It means at the moment, right? All purchase price, purchase expenditure, if there's any initial income, just in case, say selling of any residual stuff, should be coming in year 0. Initial at the moment, right? We are buying it now, 4 million. Is that a cash inflow or cash outflow? Outflow. 4 million. And purchase expenses, how much that? 6%. If you have any problem, please ask me on the way. 240,000. Now, rental growth, we receive rental from the following year. All our income and expenditure comes from the following year. Rental growth is 4% per annum. Copy and paste, 4%. Right. Market rental. Initial income is 350,000. So it's here, rental growth per annum is 4%. So this rental, the thing is, when we lease in the next year, then that's a market rent, right? When you, the first time when we give it to a tenant, we give it on a market rent. That's a market rent. 350 is market rent. But market, from following year onwards, rental growth per annum is 4%. So this increases by 4% every year. $364,000. Right. This is the market rent. So our lease rent or our passing rent for the first year is the same as market rent, 350,000. Right? And then following year, what is our lease rent or passing rent? How much? 350,000. Because rent review is every 2 years. It's 2 yearly. So this year and next year, or next year and following year, the same rent. And then after 2 years, there will be rent review. There will be a rent review. So then we adjust our passing rent to the market rent. What's the market rent? 378,560. So this is the purpose we calculate market rent every year. This is only purpose we calculate market rent every year, because there's a market rent review every 2 years. Right? So now 378,560, and it will be the same for the following year because rent review happens every 2 years. Now 2 years gone, then time to do the market review. What's the market rent? It's gone up 409,450. We adjust our passing rent to the market rent. Now the following year, still the same because this is the second year. Then 2 years are gone, then time to rent review. Time for a rent review. What's the market rent? 442,862. And no rent review for next year. We already done. And 2 years is gone. Time to do the market rent review. 478,999. And following year, it will be the same. 478,999. This is the rent we receive. This is the actual lease rent, or we call passing rent. Right. Now, at the end, we sell our investment. That's assumption. That's a must thing we do in DCF. So at the end of the 10th year, we need to sell this investment. So how do we calculate the sales value or value of the building? Use income capitalization method. Net operating income divided by cap rate. Which cap rate? Terminal cap rate or reversionary yield. Right? Terminal cap rate is 8%. So what's the sale price? For example, if the passing rent is 478 the following year, which rent we calculate? Passing rent or market rent? Market rent. You must use market rent to calculate the market value in income capitalization method, right? Market rent is 518,000, so there's no expenditure, no cash outflows, so that's the net income. So divided 8 by terminal cap rate, which is 8%. Is that cash inflow or outflow? We sell our property. Cash inflow. So it's a positive cash flow. Right. And there are some sales expenditure, real estate agent fees and advertising fees and conveyancer fees. How much is altogether? 2.5%. Is that a cash expenditure or inflow, outflow? Outflow. Then it should be minus. How much is that? 0.25. 161,902. Right. So now we need to calculate the net cash flow. There's no cash inflows or outflow, just the rental lease income, which is net. Yeah. Is it clear up now? Any questions so far? Right, cool. And now, this is our cash flow, right? This is our discounted cash flow. Now, we borrow money. How much we borrow? 70%. We borrow 70% of 4 million. 70% of 4 million. Is that a cash inflow or outflow? We borrowing money. Inflow. So it's a plus. So 4 million of 70% of 4 million is 2.8. And in first scenario, we only pay the interest. Right? In this first scenario, we only pay the interest. Then, at the end of the investment period, when we sell our investment property, we get the cash inflow and we pay off our loan, full loan. So, at the end of the 10th year, we fully pay our loan, which is 2.8 million. Is it cash inflow or outflow? Cash outflow. Right. Now we have to calculate the interest. Interest rate is 8% on 2.8. Is that right? Is that right? Now, what's wrong? A should be minus because it's a cash outflow, right? This should be minus. That's the thing that you have to be very, very careful. Identify whether it's cash inflow or cash outflow. So same amount every year, so I'll fix this. I'll fix this, put a dollar mark, and then copy and paste. So do we need to put the 224,000 at the for the 10th year? Do we have to pay 224,000 interest for the last year as well? Yeah, we do. Because we repay the loan at the end of the 10th year. So we have to pay the interest for the full year. Good. Now, calculate the net equity cash flow. Net equity cash flow. Right. This is the net equity cash flow. Right. Now calculate the present value. I use the Excel formula. Present value. How do you calculate the present value? Formula net present value. NPV. Rate. What's interest rate? Discount rate. 11%. 0.11, comma. All total of the future cash flows, net cash flows. 2,267,323. That's the present value. Again, what is this? I ask this question all the time. What is this? What this value represents? 2,267,000. Using discounted cash flows, present value. What is that? Yeah. Profit. With this, in discounted cash flows, you can't see how much profit you get. These are all cash inflows and cash outflows. This is not a P&L account, profit and loss account. This is not a P&L account. This is a cash flow, cash inflow or cash outflow. No representation of the profit. Right? See, borrowing, it's not profit. If you borrow, you have a cash inflow. That's what discounted cash flow represents, not profit or loss account. Right? So what is that present value represent? Sorry. Yeah. NPV. Here. Right? Total of all future cash flows. Good. What this value represent? 2,267,000.
So just the current day cost of future cash flows, so everything's pulled back by the discount rate to the current.
Yeah. Yep, true. So what's that one single word?
The value of the property.
Value of the property. That's a valuation. Right? If you calculate the valuation of the property using discounted cash flows, this is the value of the property. You say 2,270,000. Right? This is the valuation of the property. Total of the future net cash flows. All right. Now calculate the net present value. What you need to do, add this to get the total of future cash flows plus today's year 0 net cash flow. 827,323. That's the net present value. Now we can tell it is worth doing it, but it's not the profit. It's not the profit. It's bigger than 0. Again, I'll just refresh your memory. what is net present? You can get net present value three numbers, 0, positive or negative. If the net present value is 0, what does that mean?
Your return BTR is quantitation.
Exactly. You get the return exactly that you want. The return you want is the rate that you discounted your cash flow, which is 11%. 11% is your required profit. That's why you discount all the cash flows. And this net present value 0 means you'll get exactly the return you want, which is 11%. Right. If net present value is minus or negative, you would not get the 11% return. If the net present value is positive, like this, very positive, you get the return more than you expected. It means your return will be more than 11%. Right? So now, calculate the actual rate of return of this investment. We call internal rate of return. Right? How can we calculate the internal rate of return? I use the formula IRR. Just get the net cash flow of the total period. $17.83. So your expected return is 11%, and we knew that it should be higher than that because net present value is positive. It's a big positive. An actual rate of return is 17.83. Right? Clear? Any question? All right. This is the scenario. Right? Now, we borrow 70%. Think our return on investment is 11%. Our interest on loan is 8%. So our return is higher than the loan interest, so we should borrow more. That's why we increase our return on investment to 11%. Oh, sorry, 17.83. Right.
Why we need to borrow more money?
Because interest on loan is cheaper than the return on investment. So you can increase the return on equity. Right. This is one scenario. Again, listen. Right? This is one scenario. We only pay the interest. How it would change? We pay interest plus principal. Right? In this scenario, we borrow 70% and we only paid the interest, but we pay the full loan amount at the end. Now, we pay installment. We amortize the loan. Installment, we pay in installment interest plus capital, principal. Right? If we pay interest plus principal every year, how it will change? So now IRR is 17.83. I wrote it here. Right? Now we change the scenario. Right? I will change from here. Then we don't have any loan to pay at the end because you pay both interest and loan. Right? How do you get that? Amortize. I'll say loan repayment. In your format, you can use this one. So that's for that one, right? I'll do it here. Interest only. I'll say loan repayment.
That's 9B, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Now I'm doing the same one, so I don't have to enter everything again. But when you get home, you have two sheets to work on, right? I'll put the answers on LMS, so you can double check, right? What's the formula? This is payment. How much you pay? Your payment, installment. PMT. What's the interest rate? 8%. Yep, it is 8%. 0.08. How many installments? 10. Number of payments, 10. And present value, 2.8 million. That's loan. Right. So your installment is 417,282. That's the annual installment at the end of the period. So we pay this amount every year. It's a cash outflow. So at the end of the 10th year, we don't have any loan to repay. We fully paid the loan plus interest. Right.
Can you show the PMT formula once again?
Interest rate, number of payment, number of years, 10, and the borrowed amount, principal. Clear? Right. Now, calculate the net cash flow. Now, net present value or present value. Present value has changed to 2,115,154. Right? Net present value is changed to 675,154. What happened to the IRR? Before our IRR was 17.83. Now see the IRR. $15.05. See the difference? All the scenarios is same. Purchase price is still the same. Purchase expenses are still the same. Our net operating income is still the same. We didn't change anything. Only thing we changed is interest payment, loan repayment. Rather than paying only the interest, we pay interest plus principal. What happened to our return on investment? Dropped down to 15.5 by nearly 2.78%. You never thought about those things, I'm pretty sure. Now you see how important the gearing is on your investment. How can you increase your return on equity? Right? Even the same interest rate, same market condition, if you only pay the interest, will increase your return on investment by 2%, more than 2%. Right? If you pay loan and interest together, it means your borrowed amount later on is reduced. You don't keep all that gearing for long term. So it means you use your own equity. Right? Your borrowing, your gearing is reduced gradually. That's why your return on IRR is dropped down to 15%. See how important gearing is to increase your return on equity. If you're doing investment, these are the things that you need to consider as well. Right. Any question? Practice this again. I'll put the answers on LMS, so you can double check your answers. Right. All right. Thank you for coming. and see you in tutorial class. Good. Any question? Meantime, you can ask.